Okay, so I think we're live. So I do believe we're actually on time to the minute, I think. Jane downstairs will be happy, which is always good. We're just going to wait for a few people to get logged in, and then we'll talk about this week's live Chen chat. Jane's not feeling very well. She's got a bit of a cough. So basically, we've left her downstairs because she'd be coughing all the way through, which I'm sure nobody wants to hear particularly. So she's downstairs with a small shop that we made up earlier of some things that don't taste very nice, including things like clove, cinnamon, garlic, onion, lemon juice, apple cider vinegar. So basically made like a little kind of drink that we tend to drink, a kind of health drink really in the mornings to clear us off. So Jane's downstairs with a shot of health drink to have, which will make her eyes bulge when she takes that in. Hopefully kill off all the germs, which will be good. So welcome to this week's Chen chat. So we've got a question in, which we'll get to in a moment. So if you guys have any questions, people that are joining questions, just pop them in the chat. Hello? Oh, is it? Okay, let me just check the sound check failed this week. So let's just have a quick look at what's going on. Audio. Aha. There we go. Sound check should pass now. So we're back to the good mic, hopefully. So what we'll do is we'll start this again. Welcome to this week's Chen chat. So sound test has been done, which is good. Jane's basically got a cold and a cough, so she's not feeling very well, and she's coughing all the time. So we've left her downstairs, out of the way, to drink her health drink that we left her. So date today is the 15th of December. We always like to give the date. Kind of reminds me basically where we are and what we're doing. So not long to go until Christmas. So I'm sure all of you guys are sort of thinking about Christmas. Those of you that do, Christmas presents, family holiday, time to relax and stop work as well, which will be good. So we've been busy. We just continue right the way through. In fact, we have a really busy Christmas period actually, because it's Jane's birthday on Christmas Eve, 24th of December. And then we got Christmas Day on the 25th. And then it's my birthday, oddly, on the 26th of December. So we've kind of got 3 days of partying that we don't actually do because we're too old and tired now. But we used to in the old days. So that's what we're doing. So this week, we're going to do a question. And then obviously Chen will come in and talk about the topic. So one of the questions that came in, which was really interesting, was from somebody called Fafi Fab. And if you guys are busy on our social media, certainly Facebook, Fafi Fab is very busy. She's on there quite a lot, and we appreciate her comments. We appreciate her interaction and engagement. So Jane picked her question because it's quite interesting, actually. So basically, the question from Fafi, assuming it's F-A-F-I, Fafi, for this week is, can you please explain ancestral demonic influence? So an interesting question. So basically, she's saying that someone recommended using coconut oil, vinegar and salt. I've been doing regular cleansings for 2 years, but I'm still not functioning. Also had a lot of trauma as a child. So what can help? So this is a really good question. So when we talk about ancestral demonic influence, I guess we're just talking about ancestral influence or negative influence. So the way we see things, I guess, really from my perspective, is obviously we've got the current life that we're all living today, and we do things in our current life, and we've all had various experiences in this life. Some of us have been through traumas, problems, pain, abuse, things in childhood. So that's kind of this life related. And obviously when we go through some of those things, we know, because we talk about it very often, that when we go through trauma, especially bad trauma as a child, that can perforate the etheric field. So if we think about a person with a kind of egg-shaped field around them, that would be the etheric field. It's the closest vibration to the physical body, in my understanding. So that field is there to protect us, to kind of hold us to a spiritually sovereign space and place, really. And of course, if we go through traumas, pain, those types of things, that field can perforate, meaning holes appear. And then when we have etheric holes in our field, of course, this opens us up to connections from other things. So other negative energies can connect to us through these perforations. And when they connect to us in that way, they can obviously steal our energy. So they can pull energy from us into them. So that kind of fatigued us, makes us feel very tired, energetically depleted. Lots of people, lots of different conditions would be kind of energetic in that way. So things like CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome, would be a classic one where people feel very, very fatigued. Obviously, there's a kind of physical element to that in terms of nutritional choices and those sorts of things. But if we have entity attachment, entities, when they attach to someone, the first thing they do is steal that person's energy. So that person feels tired, fatigued. And of course, those perforations then basically get bigger. So when negative energies or demonic entities attach to someone, the first thing they do is steal that person's energy and start to make the holes bigger. And then, of course, they basically drain more and more energy, start to manipulate the thought process, certainly start to manipulate the dream state. So people that are having negative dreams or terrifying dreams, if you wake up and you're sweating in a dream, being chased, classic one really, heart's beating, the bed's wet with sweat, all of those things point to some sort of entity attachment problem really. So that would point to, from my perspective, something negative being attached to that person and manipulating that emotional state to basically harvest the energy to pull the negative adrenaline from that person that's having that dream or sleep state problem. So if we think about everything that Chen talks about everything is vibration. Everything is vibrational frequency. So if we're vibrating at a high frequency, we're kind of out of the reach of negative things. If we're vibrating at lower frequency or very low frequencies, then of course negative energies that also live in those low frequency fields can connect to our energy, and they can manipulate our mental state, keep us in fear, in anger. All of the negative emotions hold our vibration down. So that's what these entities will do. They'll basically connect to people, control their emotional state, try and keep the vibration low, and obviously assimilate that kind of negative energy or that adrenaline into themselves. So the way that we tend to see things really is the same way that we kind of use animals. So if we think about cows for a moment, we basically put cows in a field, they kind of eat grass, they go into a milking parlour, certainly dairy cows. And then, of course, because they're pregnant, obviously they're female, so then we extract the milk. The milk is then taken by us to use in different products, whether that be milk, cheese, dairy products. The cow has no idea where the milk's gone. It gets put back out into a field the next day. That cycle continues. So we as humans are kind of living on the substance of cows that are being produced, or milk is being produced for their babies. So these negative entities or demonic entities work in the same way. They're basically harvesting our energy, our frequency, but only the low frequencies. If we're vibrating at a high frequency and we're in a positive mindset, we're happy, we're laughing, we're quite joyful, we're in love or feeling positive, they can't connect to us because those vibrational frequencies are outside of the realm that they can connect into. So they need us to be in a state of anger, fear, negativity, all of the low frequency emotions, crying all day, upset, anxious. Any low frequency emotional state or feeling is where these entities are going to be effectively trying to connect to us. And when they connect, they just continue to manipulate that person's emotional state, that person's energetic field, open it up as much as they can, pull more energy from that person, create more negative thoughts. And this is where we move into then the things or the kind of psychological concepts of schizophrenia, people that are hearing voices, having negative thoughts, negative ideas, emotional state is being changed and manipulated. That person also would start to probably self-harm or be encouraged to self-harm because that's what these entities do. They live in that space, they live in that vibrational frequency. And then, of course, at the end of the scale, we have obviously things like suicide, or killing other people. So these entities will be trying to manipulate people to firstly kind of self-harm and then obviously to move towards suicidal thoughts, suicidal intentions, or to do bad things to other people. So if we look at lots of prisoners and the demographic of prisoners, most of them say when they did the things that they did, especially terrible things, if they killed someone or really hurt someone else, quite often they say they were hearing voices to encourage them to do those things. So we have to explore where those voices come from. Now, from our perspective, we believe, and we've proved spiritually, obviously Dr. Terence Palmer worked on this for 10 years with myself, and we basically did over 1,000 cases ourselves with a few other mediums, John O. Webster and quite a few others as well, to get like a baseline of data. And we basically proved that these negative entities exist in this frequency band that we can't see. It's outside of our visible spectrum, but they do connect to people, and they make people, or encourage people to do negative things. So this is kind of spiritual possession, really, in different formats. So there's obviously the encouragement of negative intention to do negative things. And then, of course, you've got spiritual possession, whereby these entities take control of people. So they come into the field, can take over someone, and then actually do very bad things, and then effectively they leave again. And of course, that person has no recollection of the things that they've done. And of course, there's lots of prisoners and people in prisons that will tell you and talk about the fact they didn't commit, and they pass lie detector tests because they say they didn't commit the things they got kind of put in prison for, because they spiritually didn't do those things. But a possessing entity takes control, creates or performs a crime of some type of distinction, and then basically leaves that person. So something comes in, takes over, does something negative, and then disappears again, and that person then is on the hook, obviously goes to court, gets found guilty, because it was their physicality that did the things that are negative. So they end up in prison for the things that they did, even though from a spiritual perspective it wasn't them. And that this is where we haven't really got to the point in our kind of society and in our spiritual understanding to understand that these things do happen. And there's lots and lots of people in prison and have been accused of doing, found guilty, I guess, of doing things that they didn't actually do from a spiritual viewpoint. But of course, their physical body was involved. So again, you know, as we kind of understand the spiritual aspects and we start to develop, and psychiatry kind of starts to move forward, because at the moment we've still got this problem with psychiatry whereby they don't understand and don't believe in the spiritual aspects of things, which is slightly odd, really, since 99% of people on the planet are religious, with one denomination or another, and all religions talk about spirits and they talk about spiritual entities, and yet we've got psychiatry that's being kind of science-led, effectively, that believes that schizophrenia and auditory voice hallucination is a chemical imbalance in the brain, and people that are hearing thoughts, having negative thoughts, doing negative things, it's coming from an internal space inside themselves. Whereas we know from a spiritual perspective, and we've proved many times that that's not the case. We know that there is spiritual influence, and obviously as part of our work, we work to clear people from negative interference, to remove the entities and the things that are connected to them, so the voices and the thoughts, the negative feelings stop, the dream state becomes clear, people can sleep properly, people feel better. Moving people back to spiritual sovereignty is the way that we term things, really. So in our view of the world, psychiatry is still a long way off actually understanding exactly what's going on. And obviously we see that our way or our methods are kind of pioneeringly forward, certainly from an SRA perspective. So from the Spirit Release Academy perspective, the work that I did with Terence Palmer, who's obviously passed now, but he's still working with us in spirit. We know, because Terry wrote the book, The Science of Spirit Possession, and talked about it, and that book was supposed to be aimed at psychiatry to teach them and educate them that there is a spiritual component to people that are hearing voices, people that are having auditory voice hallucination, people that are doing negative things because they're being encouraged to do negative things, and we need to bring that to the surface and talk about it. But we're still not there yet. Obviously, psychiatry is kind of, you know, is science-led, even though, as I say, it seems very odd that most people on the planet have some affiliation to one religion or another. And then we've got this scientific kind of community that seems to be holding everything back from a spiritual perspective. So to get to the question, really, so Fafi Fab's question was, can you please explain ancestral demonic influence? So she's basically been using coconut oil, vinegar and salt. There's regular cleansings, but it's still not functioning. So if we think about what happens when we have a negative entity, so we've got two different parts of this conversation, really. We've got negative entities, so things that have never been human. So different types of species, so we can call them demonic entities, astral demons. I think they're termed quite often by people in the spiritual arena. And then, of course, you've got discarnate spirits. So people like us that have had a human life, have died, they're what we would call as discarnate spirit. So there's two types of different energy in the way that we see things. There's entities that have never been human, and there are discarnate spirit, earthbounds, basically people like ourselves that have been human, died. The spirit hasn't moved across to the spiritual frequency, and therefore it's still earthbound. So it's still here. We can still interact, communicate, and talk to that energy. So people like Fafi that have had a traumatic childhood, or some part of their life has been traumatic, would mean that their etheric field is perforated, caused trauma. Again, people talk about dissociative disorder, and the other types of psychosis comes into that same conversation, really. But if you've been through a lot of trauma that's particularly bad, then your personality can divide and split, and this is kind of termed multiple personality disorder, or did. So again, there's different terminology, different words, but effectively the concept being that if you go through something very, very traumatic, the way that the human mind deals with it is it splits and creates containers. So one container has the experience that was negative, the other container basically is protected. So it's kind of a way of protecting the core conscious awareness, really, in the core self. And some people have had traumatic experiences and can't remember them. But in hypnosis, hypnosis practitioners can get back to the trauma, they can get back to those places and explore the things that happened to that person and bring that forward to be able to bring it to the table, to look at it, try and heal those parts and move them forward. So in our sort of view of the world, really, if you have an entity connected to you, sea salt, vinegar, oil, all those things won't work. Burning incense isn't going to work. So basically, when you've got entity attachment, that entity is connected into your field, it's connected into your energy. So all of those things that we talk about to be protective, to things like sprinkling sea salt around the house, using salt, oil, vinegar, all of those things are nice to-dos, but they're not going to have the power to be able to detach and disconnect negative entities. So to do that in our version, we rely on our spiritual friends, basically. So our spirit guides, obviously mine is Chen, have been doing this for a long time, and this is why myself and Jono set up Spirit Release Academy, because we're working with these spiritual entities. So my guide is Chen, Jono's is White Hawk, and there's a whole raft of other entities behind the scenes that are working with us to clear this demonic layer, these demonic entities from people. So we don't do that work ourselves. We get the guides basically to connect to the client, to scan the field, to find what's there, and then to basically disconnect that negative control, that negative entity. So coming back to the question from Fafi, this is basically the answer from my perspective, is that when you have some type of ongoing trauma that's very painful, there will probably be multiple personalities, maybe in the core conscious awareness, but you'll certainly have entities connected to you that are feeding off your energy, fatiguing and draining you. And of course, they're not going to leave basically with anything like the lines of sound, sea salt, burning incense sticks, all of those sorts of things. They might be, they might push them back slightly, but not going to disconnect them. So we need a very powerful entity to come in from a spiritual perspective behind the scenes to basically disconnect that negative entity that's connected to someone and basically seal the etheric field, bring the etheric field back to a sovereign protected space. And when that person moves back to sovereignty, then of course they're protected, and obviously their own spirit guides will be helping to keep them protected, keep them clear. And that's the kind of way that we tend to work. So from Fafi's question, really, if you'd like to reach out to us, just send us an email, contact@andy-porter.co.uk, or you can reach out on social media. I know that you're very busy on social media. We see quite a lot of your comments and things. So just reach out to us. Jane will get you scheduled in basically for complimentary clearing, and we'll get you cleared, see if we can bring you back to a sovereign space. And then maybe we can have a conversation about how that feels for you, the intervention that we've applied, how that worked, and your kind of perceptions as to what you feel, really, because obviously we're aware that you've obviously been going through quite a difficult time for quite a long time, and we'd like to help if we can, which will be good. Okay, so just coming back to the comments, we've got Lisa here. Good to have you, Lisa. Jane's happy because it sounds good. Vanessa's here too. Hi, Vanessa. Motivational mindset. Greetings from Canada. Novelle, oh, good to have you, Novelle. Always see your, I like your motivational mindset naming. We've also got Dawn. Hi, Dawn. Good to have you too. So if anyone else is listening, if you want to put your name in the chat and just say hi, we'll be keen to see you. If you've got questions, pop them in the chat. We'll do our best to answer them as we do. So let me just go to my screen a second. Okay, cool. So Chen's page. Okay, so what we're going to do, so that was the question really from Fafi. So today's conversation, if you just joined, is all about demonic influence. The question was about ancestral. So do demonic entities follow people from birth to birth, incarnation to incarnation? So my understanding is that they can, and they do. So if you have a negative entity connected to you in this life, or a demonic entity, if that's not cleared, then when you pass, go back to spirit, potentially that entity may come back again, follow you through incarnation on to the next time. And that would explain why children sometimes have possession, spirit possession problems or entity problems, which kind of wouldn't make sense when they're really young, to think, you know, a 3, 4, 5-year-old child shouldn't have a negative entity attached, creating problems. So if they are attached and they're creating problems, where do they come from? What's that child done to open their field? Or did that demonic entity or that controlling entity come forward and follow that person through another life, basically, which is probably more likely. So the concept of ancestral demonic influence is more of a conversation when we think about the sorts of children that we look to clear. We clear children just about every day. So, you know, our understanding is some of them have got complex problems. There's obviously a lot of people with ADHD and all of the other kind of afflictions that the children are coming through with, Asperger's and all the other things that we can think about that would open them up to some sort of negative influence. But certainly ancestral part of that conversation, we have to explore and realize that obviously entities can connect. If they're connected to your spiritual energy in this life and they're not detached, and then you obviously go through to spirit, potentially that entity is still connected to you, your field. And then of course when you reincarnate, potentially you reincarnate, and of course that entity still has an attached connection to you to come forward into the next life. So thinking about the ancestral aspect is quite interesting really from that perspective. So this is what we're going to ask Chen his opinion on. My opinion is it makes sense to me that could happen, obviously, and I'm sure it'll be interesting to see what Chen's version of that will be too. So hi to Kate, good to have you, Kate. Kathy is here as well. Kimberly and Henderson, yep, perfect. Leslie and Dawn. Dawn's just saying ancestral entity. Never thought of it before. I know it's an interesting conversation actually, Dawn, that Fafi raised about the ancestral aspects of entities and how they can attach, and obviously how they can potentially follow us from one incarnation to another, which kind of does make sense really. Okay, Jane's just saying that she'll look forward to next week. She's got a cough basically. I mean, it could be worse. She could have man flu or something and then she'd be really, really poorly, but she's just got a cough. But of course the cough is pretty non-stop, so no good for this kind of live call effectively, or this live session. Okay, let's get Chen to come in and see what his opinion is on ancestral demonic influence. So let me just set my timer. Okay, so if you guys want, oh, Jenny's here as well. Hi, Jenny, good to have you. Pop your questions into the comments. I'll see them when I come back, obviously when Chen's finished, and then we can go over anything that you guys have either thought about, brought up, would like answered. Okay, so let's hand over to Chen, and I will see you folks in a moment. Well, about 20 minutes probably. Good day to you all. It's my pleasure again this week to be able to navigate through from a spiritual perspective and offer my advice, my opinions, and my understanding to you all to provide guidance, certainly from a spiritual perspective. So welcome to this week's, as we call it, the Chen Chat. Unfortunately, my dear friend Jane is not with us this evening. She's downstairs, coughing quite a lot, it would seem. So our thoughts go out to her, and obviously you have just myself and Andrew to put up with this week, but I'm sure we will manage to get through. Jane did say earlier, you'll have to do it on your own. This is when she was speaking to young Andrew, and I did laugh to myself and chuckle, which was quite funny, because we all know that obviously myself and Jane have a very deep and friendly connection, and I'm sure this comes across when we do these group conversations. And this is something that I find very delightful, to actually be able to have a companion by my side that we can laugh and we can joke and we can keep the vibration high. Because of course, some of these conversations that we have do move into the negative fringes, because we do need to highlight and shine our light in the darkest of places. But we do not wish to create fear or put people in a fearful state. We merely wish to explain how things work from a spiritual perspective, so that you can shore your own energy up. You can put yourself in your protected space. You can invoke your spiritual guidance, and of course your spiritual protection, to keep you in that sovereign space that all humans should be in. So I know that the question this week is about ancestral demonic influence. So obviously when we say demonic, that word means different things to different people, generally down to your particular religious disposition or your cultural or societal upbringing. So let's replace the word demonic with negative, because as far as I'm concerned, everything is polarized in this particular space, either positively or negatively, really. So of course there are benign energies that are neither positive or negative. But if we look at the distribution energetically generally from a planet Earth perspective, then we have different frequencies. Some are low, therefore negative. Some are higher, therefore positive. It makes things much easier to explain. So if we think that we know, we look at nature every day, and you see nature, everything in nature has an opponent. Everything is being eaten by something else. So there's a big food chain starting right down at the lower end of the food chain. When we're thinking of creepy crawlies and bugs, they tend to be eaten by certain things. And then of course there's something that eats the things that eats bugs, and so on and so forth. So the whole food chain is a sequential sequence. Obviously human beings, to the most part, are quite high in the food chain, not the highest, as you would expect to be. So there are other energies and entities that exist in different frequencies that you cannot perceive or see with your physical vision, but people that are open spiritually, so people that are mediumistic or have opened their field, or sensitives as we can call them, can perceive these other energies and entities, and they sit just outside of your visible spectrum. And of course they can be monitored, because everything has a vibratory frequency, everything has an electromagnetic frequency. We know this, science has proved these things. So everything can be monitored and measured. So each person has a electromagnetic frequency range that you exist within, and all of you have your own frequencies depending upon your understanding, your body type, your build, your nutrition, the amount of water you hold. We know that human beings are mainly water, and effectively batteries. If we think about a battery, batteries are the same type of concept. When you charge a battery, you basically are charging electrodes. So the human being effectively is a battery to a certain degree, because mostly water. And of course, if we have the right constituency from a battery perspective, some people have more energy than other people. People that have low energy or have low electromagnetic force inside them, their battery version will be quite low. And of course, people that have high energy, children, teenagers, are basically running at different frequency. They have a higher output. And of course, as we get older, we know that we age, the battery runs down, we become more tired, we can do less things. So the human being is basically a battery of energy, and these negative entities that we talk about outside of the visible spectrum can connect to people, and of course they assimilate your energy, but mainly through emotional frequency. So negative entities exist in a very low frequency band, and for them to connect and feed off of your energy, you need to be in a low frequency. So you need to be in fear, effectively. Fear is the key frequency band. And we can talk about rage and anger, other low frequencies, but if we think of fear being the core frequency, this is the energy level they're looking to connect into. So when we think about what happens from an ancestral perspective, if you have entities connected to you and you pass in this life, they're still connected to you. Obviously, you've lost your physicality, so you lose the physical aspect and the energetics of the physical. But of course, and emotions are connected to physical things. So when we're in spirit, spiritual frequency, we don't have emotions. Emotions come from the physical body. So if you pass, you die, and you have an entity connected to you, and you go off to a different frequency band, back to spirit, as we would say, that entity can still remain connected to your energetic vibrational frequency. They won't be able to feed off you in the same way they did when you had a physical body, because you had emotions, of course, that they could manipulate, but they're still connected to you. So they can connect to and hold your conscious awareness in quite a negative way, really. But then, of course, when you reincarnate, you come back again for another incarnated life, that entity still has energetic cords and connections to your conscious awareness. So basically, they can choose to reconnect to you and then go through a similar type of configuration. And when we think about lots of negative people, when we think about people running organizational structures and societal structures, and we look at those people, lots of them don't seem to have a soul. Lots of them appear very negative, callous, making decisions. They don't seem to have any empathy. But who are these people? Where is their emotional understanding? Well, if you look behind the scenes and pull the curtain, you will see that there are entities connecting to those people, controlling their emotional state, controlling their energy. And of course, this happens from a bloodline perspective. So many bloodlines are controlled by these entities behind the scenes, and they've been reincarnating time and time again. So if you're part of that bloodline, when you incarnate into this life, you come back through these entities already attached to you. They've been part of your hierarchical family, if you like, time and time and time again. And this is when we look at human life, we see that the financial distribution happens with some of these big family names that seems to roll on time after time after time. And that's because, of course, that these entities behind the scenes are part of those bloodlines, are controlling the incarnated person. The child that comes in has these entities attached, and therefore that entity will control their thought process, will drive their life, will push them down a certain path, will open doors for them as they need to. So there is this unseen, hidden aspect of human society. And of course, this has been depicted on all of the pyramids. Probably most of you have seen the pictures in the Great Pyramid and other pyramids and other architecture over the world, showing basically non-physical humans that seem to be larger than humans, controlling things behind the scenes. Some of them have different physiology. Some of them have the faces or the heads of birds. Some of them have more reptilian features. But we see that history shows you, if you look at it very quickly and clearly, there has always been this unseen influence that basically manufactures and guides human evolution, but really in a negative way. And that, I think, would hopefully explain why ancestral influence is actually correct. People are born, they do come in with these entities connected from small children, and therefore their life continually seems to go wrong. They attract the wrong people, the wrong partners, the wrong influence. They get into substance abuse. They end up traumatized as children through some type of negative practice or trauma. So basically, they're kind of set up to a certain degree before they've even come in, because of course they are incarnating with these, what we might call negative entities, as part of the ancestral linkage. So hopefully that explains that question. Now, can they be removed? Of course they can be removed. This is what we do. So from my perspective, my whole role really on planet Earth, working and guiding young Andrew, and of course Jane too, we're here to work from a positive perspective to clear and remove this negative layer that is influencing humanity's evolution. And of course, the knock-on effect is it brings the vibrational planet frequency up. So the entities that I work with in our team, and certainly from a Spirit Release Academy perspective, we're here to clear this negative layer. And this is what we're doing. We're training people, students, practitioners to understand what's going on behind the scenes, and one by one to clear their clients, to bring the vibration up of the client, to clear the trauma, the pain, the negativity. And so that brings the vibration of planet Earth up. And as the planet's vibration starts to rise, then of course the negative layer won't be able to sustain itself here. And this is what's happening now. There is many groups of entities that you do not see, that are probably never spoken of at all, even in some of the spiritual circles, that are here working from a positive perspective to clear this whole negative vibration, these negative entities that have had so much control on planet Earth, all through humanity's evolution. So if we look back through the calendar of the human being, there's never really been a time when these entities aren't behind the scenes controlling and manipulating from an influential perspective. But now is the time. The vibration of the planet is changing. The astrodynamics are changing. Astrology is changing. There's a lot of change happening. And now is the time that we need people to step forward, to take up the challenge, to basically join us as a team and work to clear, firstly, people and then space, and bring the planet's vibration up to be able to heal your own bloodlines, your own evolution, the humanity, changing it for yourself, but working and connecting with other interdimensional entities like myself. So I make no secret of the fact that I did have a human life back in the 1600s as Chen. Chen is, of course, who I associate with. That's my personality and core conscious awareness, and this is how I project myself. But I also have other parts to my personality, to my energy stream. I have other abilities that really are not spoken of particularly, because I don't wish them to be the focus. The focus for me is my life as Chen, a human being here to work with yourselves, with young Andrew, with young Jane, and to work to change this planet's frequency and bring things into a much more positive place. And this is what we do every single day. So hopefully that's answered the question on the ancestral negative. I know the word was demonic, but we replaced it with negative influence. So hopefully that makes sense to you all, and I've given you part of a story. Humans have a story. Much of the story that you've been told is not really correct. But like all things, of course, everything tends to be written by the people that control behind the scenes. And that's a story that people wish you to believe. But if you think about who you are, what you are, where you come from, your own hierarchical lineage, your own family, how far do you trace yourself back? Where are the records of those things? What has your family been doing? What did your family members do? What jobs did they have? What finance did they have? Were they wealthy or were they particularly poor from that perspective? So think about yourself and where you're moving on your line. And this is the time to put effort in to change you, to change your own historical lineage. But more importantly, to change your species. Humanity is moving forward at a vast rate of knots now, and there are many, many other species of interdimensional entity that want to work and connect, but they can only do that when they meet you halfway. So you have to walk down that path, and we will meet you the other side. So we'll say good day to you all, pass you back to Andrew, and hopefully you've enjoyed this week's Chen chat. Good day. Okay, so I'm back. I can see a few questions. So hopefully Chen's answered the main question. I'm sure he probably went off on a bit of a side step somewhere. So ancestral demonic influence was the question that Chen was supposed to be answering. So hopefully he's covered that. I'm sure Jane will tell me a bit later. Should be good. So just going through the chat. So Jane's saying that she's got a cough. Yep, so it's kind of lady cough, woman cough. I mean, man flu is terrible, not a terrible affliction, but obviously the girls have these things too at times. So Jane's got the cough. So Kate is saying, yes, this is what my guides explained to me as well. I've recently been dealing with a curse directed at my husband by his mother. My guest told me that even after she passes, I won't be able to crush her over into the light for healing and understanding if what she did, because she will still be under contract with the dark force entity. Well, that's interesting, Kate. Although she has done these terrible things to us, it saddens me to know that's what she's in store for, as I get no enjoyment if it's anyone suffering. Well, this is the thing, Kate, I guess, isn't it? That if you do negative things and you curse people and you kind of create trauma and pain in people's lives, then you kind of have to expect that kind of might backfire at some point, really. Thanks for the comment. That was a good one. Okay, Kerry's here as well. So Kerry says, hi, Dean Chen. It's nice to be here for you live. I've currently seen Andrew's chat with Dr. Jerry. Okay, yeah, Jerry Mozinski, which was good. It's great to see you working together to help with these negative energies and entities. Yeah, thanks, Kerry. That's what we've been doing. So we've been working this week with some of Jerry's cases, basically. So he's got quite a few people he's been working with for years, I think, basically, that have been suffering with schizophrenia, hearing voices, those sorts of things. And he's been using his MACE protocol to try to rectify it. So we've kind of picked up some of those clients now to try our version to see if we can bring those people back to proper spiritual sovereignty and clear the voices and the other experiences, negative experiences they're having. So it's good. It's good from my perspective to working with Jerry. I think this is what we need to do more of, really. We need to create a bigger research group, more people doing these types of things. And I'm sure there's lots of people with lots of protocols out there in the big spiritual arena that we've never heard of, like myself, that just sit there working away every day. But I think if we can start to kind of connect everyone together, we can start to create this place whereby, if you've got a problem, you go to best of breed people. So you try Jerry's version. If that doesn't work, then you try our version. If that doesn't work, there are other people that you can try things from. But if we kind of bring it all together, we should be able to get to a point that literally people can be very quickly brought back to spiritual sovereignty, and we can disconnect, this level of negativity that is generally playing up effectively. So Neela's Sophia saying, I'd love to join Monday. We'd love to have you. We've currently got 33% off from an SRA perspective. So if you guys feel like it's your calling, you should be doing this work, then hop over to the spiritleaseacademy.com website and book a consultation call with myself, John, or Ruth. So we'll have a quick chat with you. We've got lots of different options, things that we can do, payment plans, that kind of thing. Because our job, basically, our dictate by Chen and his team, is to get as many people trained as we can. So we're trying to do that in the ways that we do. There's a whole huge kind of community there behind the scenes and lots of support for practitioners. So it's quite a pioneering, leading edge place to be if you're here, or if you feel like you're here to basically clear this level of negativity that we talk about quite often. Okay, Chen was early. Wow, Chen was like 3 minutes early. Amazing. So Leslie is saying, when clearing ancestral or past life entities, is there a residual negative energy that needs to be cleared back down those timelines as well? I would probably think there probably would be, Leslie, actually, because again, if we're just clearing the entity from this incarnation, then again, there's going to be control probably, or maybe curses or contracts going back in time through the ancestral lineage that we need to clear. And again, this is what we expect the guides to do. we're not going to be able to do that ourselves because we can't see the contracts that have been made by our descendants in kind of past lives effectively, but the guides can. Chen and the team can basically go through that lineage, find all of the contractual agreements that have been made and basically clear and remove them, and that's what we would expect them to do as well. That's a really good point, a good question. Just going to say hi to Joe. Joe's here, as she normally is, so evening to you. Okay, and Naval is looking forward to starting SRA training September. September seems a long way off, Naval, I have to say. Really December now, but yeah, it's going to be great. And I think we're really enjoying ourselves. John is kind of recovering now; he's getting better. So we've had a bit of a hiatus for a couple of months whilst John had a pretty major operation. But he's like a cat with 9 lives. He springs back pretty fast, really. So he's back in the hot seat working again, and probably be in the office this week, which will be good. So basically sort of talking about the courses that we're running, where we're going with that work, and of course there's a whole research arm. So we've got 2 things really from an SRA perspective. There's also the Sovereign Souls podcast platform. So on Apple, Amazon, and Spotify, you can listen to some of the practitioners actually in this series 2 that's just been released now. I think Miriam was the first one. So she is a psychology student, so not particularly spiritual, mediumistic in the way that we are, coming in from a very different place. But she's seen how the protocol works so efficiently and effectively on her own sister. And she basically talks about that in those podcasts. So if you're interested to listen to that, head over to Sovereign Souls, episode 2. I think one was dropped last week. There's another one for Miriam, part 2, that's being dropped tomorrow, actually. So that should be good as well. So there's lots going on, really, from our perspective. If you're listening to this and you're thinking that you're interested to know what we do, how we do things, head over to the spiritleaseacademy.com website. You can reach out to Ruth. Ruth is our biggest cog in our biggest wheel. She's always in the office, and she does an amazing job. Also, Natasha, Tara, and Dave behind the scenes are very active as well. So we've got kind of a big group of people now that are helping run the academy from a management perspective. There's lots going on. We're looking to do lots with research. And if you guys have got husbands or people that have come back from war, people that have PTSD, veterans, people in the armed forces, we're looking to kind of reach out and work with some of those people from a research perspective to basically look at what's attached to them when they come back from war. We need to clear that field, remove that trauma, a lot of that negativity, bring them back to a sovereign place, which hopefully should work to help them with PTSD and some of those things too. But certainly from a spiritual sovereign perspective, they would probably need to be cleared. If you know someone that's struggling, they've been to active war zones, they've come back, they've got problems, they're hearing voices, negative thoughts, that kind of thing, you can reach out to us. We'll get them to reach out to us to say that we are interested to talk to you from a research perspective, and we'll basically spin that conversation up, which will be great. Okay, I think from my perspective, so Naval's saying I've already registered to start in September. I'm working on getting Reiki Master prior to that. Wow, so you are busy, Naval. That's cool. Well, Reiki is a great kind of gateway drug, really, into SRA. So we find that Reiki practitioners are perfect people because they already know about energy. They can control and move and manipulate energy fields. So they're very well placed to kind of work in the way that we do, certainly from a facilitation perspective. So that's a really good thing to do that. So enjoy your Reiki Master course, which sounds fun. Okay, folks, I think that probably brings this week to a conclusion. I can hear Jane downstairs still coughing, so hopefully you haven't needed to listen to that. I think the microphone above me is quite good and hopefully blocks out most of the background noise. So hopefully there's been no cough, cough, cough. And I'll continue to feed her cloves, cinnamon, garlic. What else is there? Cardamom pods. We make a bit of a mixture up, basically, that doesn't taste very good. Apple cider vinegar, lemon juice, all sorts of things. So if I continue to feed her that for the rest of the week, she'll be raring to go for next week, hopefully. Okay, well, I'll say good night, folks, or good morning, good day, wherever you are, and we'll catch you again next week. Take care, and thanks for joining.